You wake up. There is no alarm. There is no meeting at 9. There is no inbox waiting to punish you for sleeping in. You stretch. You eat something you gathered yesterday. And then you have an entire day in front of you, with almost nothing on it. For most of human history, this was not a fantasy. This was Tuesday. We tend to imagine our ancient ancestors locked in constant struggle, clawing every calorie out of a hostile world, exhausted from dawn to dusk just to survive one more night. That image feels obvious. It feels like common sense. And it is almost completely wrong. So what did ancient humans actually do all day? In the 1960s, an anthropologist named Richard Lee set out to answer exactly that question. He spent months living among the Juahonsi, a hunter-gatherer people in the Kalahari Desert of southern Africa, and he did something almost nobody had done before. He timed them. He tracked exactly how many hours adults spent getting food, making tools, and doing the actual work of survival. His number stunned the academic world. Around 15 hours a week. 15 hours. Not 50. Not 70. 15. That is less than half of a standard modern work week, spent on the single task our brains assume must have consumed every waking hour of prehistoric life. The rest of the day was not spent lying around in exhaustion, either. It was spent on something that looks strikingly familiar to you: rest, conversation, storytelling, craft, and play. Decades later, the anthropologist James Sussman lived among the same Juahonsi communities and reached a similar conclusion. He described their traditional way of life as one with an abundance of a very specific resource: leisure time. Not because their environment was generous by accident, but because their needs were few, their skills were sharp, and their culture had no concept of endless accumulation. You gathered what you needed. You stopped. Stop and consider what that means. For nearly all of the roughly 300,000 years that anatomically modern humans have existed, the default human schedule was not grinding labor. It was work, followed by long stretches of unstructured time, shared with other people every single day. So let's reconstruct what one of those days might have actually looked like. You wake with first light, because there is no reason not to. Your body has spent its entire existence sinking to the sun, and there is no artificial glow keeping you up past dark. You eat something small, maybe fruit or a root saved from the day before. Then the day splits into tasks, but not evenly among everyone. Some people go out to gather. In most hunter-gatherer societies, this gathering work, often done by women, actually provided the majority of daily calories. Roots, nuts, berries, tubers, insects, whatever the local landscape offered that week. It was reliable. It did not depend on a lucky throw of a spear. Meanwhile, a smaller group might go hunting. This was less consistent. Some days it produced meat. Many days it produced nothing at all. But hunting was never really about calories alone. It carried status, skill, and story. A successful hunt meant food shared across the entire group, not hoarded by the hunter. Anthropologists call this widespread pattern demand sharing, and it meant that even a bad hunter, on a bad week, still ate. By midday, the heat in many environments made heavy activity a bad idea anyway, so people rested. They repaired tools. They shaped stone. They Saturday. Children spent this time differently than you might expect, too. There was no schoolroom, no set curriculum, no bell dividing subjects into 40-minute blocks. Instead, children learned by watching and imitating adults directly, picking up plant knowledge, tool-making, and social rules through observation and play rather than instruction. Anthropologists who have studied childhood among groups like the Hadza of Tanzania have described this as one continuous, informal apprenticeship, stretched across an entire childhood instead of compressed into a classroom. A child who wanted to learn how to start a fire simply sat close enough to watch it happen, again and again, until one day they could do it themselves. The elders of the group carried a different kind of weight. Research on the grandmother hypothesis, developed by researchers including Kristen Hawkes studying the Hadza, suggests that older women who were past their own childbearing years contributed enormously to group survival, not through hunting, but through steady, reliable gathering that fed grandchildren and freed up younger mothers to have more children sooner. In this view, a long human lifespan past fertility was not an accident. It was an evolved strategy, and it meant elders were not sitting on the sidelines of daily life. They were often among the most productive people in the entire group. And sitting, it turns out, was not wasted time. The anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied the Jew-Ahontz's conversations around the campfire and found something remarkable. During the day, most talk was practical: complaints, logistics, minor conflicts, economic matters. But at night, around the fire, the subject shifted almost entirely to something else. Stories. Roughly 80% of nighttime conversation was storytelling, about distant relatives, ancestors, myths, and the social world stretching far beyond the small group physically present. That firelight storytelling was not a break from the real work of survival. It was the work. It transmitted history, values, humor, and social bonds across generations, without a single word written down. Here is the twist that tends to catch people off guard. The moment humanity actually started working harder, on average, was not deep in the Ice Age. It happened around 10,000 years ago, when humans in different parts of the world began domesticating plants and settling into farming. Agriculture is often taught as pure progress, the moment humans finally got smart and organized. But the skeletal record tells a messier story. Early farmers, on average, show shorter stature, worse dental health, and more signs of chronic physical strain than the hunter-gatherers who came before them in the same regions. Farming produced more total calories per acre. It also meant longer hours, less varied diets, denser and dirtier settlements, and, for the first time, real risk of famine if a single crop failed. In other words, the invention many of us were taught to think of as humanity's great leap forward may have actually made daily life harder for the people living through it. Think about what that shift meant, hour by hour. A hunter-gatherer's day had slack built into it. Miss a hunt, and you eat what someone else brought back. Skip a day of hard gathering, and the stored knowledge of the land, which roots survive drought, which trees fruit early, usually covers the gap. A farmer's day has no such cushion. Crops need planting on schedule, weeding on schedule, harvesting on schedule. The land does not forgive a missed week the way a shared campfire does. Work stopped being something you finished. It became something that was always waiting for you tomorrow, and the day after that. Why did it happen anyway? Because farming could feed more people per unit of land, even if each individual person worked longer and ate worse. Populations grew. And once a farming society exists next to a foraging one, the foraging one is eventually outcompeted or absorbed, whether anyone chose that outcome consciously or not. So the 15-hour work week was not lost because someone proved it was inferior. It was lost because it could not outproduce a system willing to work its people harder in exchange for more mouths fed. That trade, more hours for more output, more accumulation for less daily freedom, is one your ancestors made roughly 10,000 years ago. And in many ways, you are still living inside the consequences of that decision every single day. Think about your own week. The alarm that decides when your body wakes, regardless of what it actually needs. The calendar that fills without asking your permission. The quiet cultural assumption that if you are not producing something, you are wasting time. None of that was written into human biology. It was written into human history, and a fairly recent chapter of it. Your body still carries the older programming. It still wants sunlight in the morning and darkness at night. It still craves unstructured time with other people, not scrolling side by side, but actually talking, the way people once did around a fire. It still wants rest in the middle of a long day, not guilt for taking it. For nearly all of the time humans have existed, a full life did not require constant output. It required enough food, a group you trusted, and time left over to simply be a person. You wake up. There is no alarm. There is no meeting at 9. There is no inbox waiting to punish you for sleeping in. That was never fantasy. For most of human history, it was simply what a normal day looked like.